Africa Happy Hour series. The purpose is to have 1, 2, 3, 4 drinks and talk as much as you like. Actually, we're going to try and keep it short and concise on our side, but really want to inject some joy, I think, into everyone's lives since we've all been in this shutdown for so long.
Yeah, and we're as tired of being stuck indoors as you are, so hopefully we can take you on a virtual journey today through South Africa and Mozambique. We're really excited to relive this experience with you.
Yeah, everybody knows me, knows I'd rather be in Africa than anywhere. So welcome. Cheers to all of you.
Cheers.
Please grab your glasses and chin chin. Again, welcome and thanks for joining us. And if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat function in Zoom to send through the chat to our moderator, Becca, who will then ensure that your questions or any queries you have come through to us. But without further ado, I will hand it over to Michann to do the honors.
So it's an official introduction. This is Sunit Sangrashka. He's the president of our company. And I'm Michann Wornley. I'm the director of operations. And for anybody who hasn't had the opportunity to travel with us before, I just wanted to very briefly describe who we are, what we do. We're a US-based tour operator based in Florida. We specialize in custom safaris. And do you want to talk about a little bit about your family and their background?
Sure. My connection to Africa is I was born and raised there, and my family's been there for 4 generations. So I have a special place in my heart for the continent. And nothing pleases me more than to send people to Africa so that they can really experience the people, the wilderness areas, the wildlife. It's just a magical place. It's not what you see on CNN, unfortunately. Well, fortunately it isn't, because it truly is one of the last bits of paradise left in the world. And as we sit in isolation today, I can tell you that the wildlife are having such a great time. No pollution, no tourists, but at the same time, you'll see what our business does and what you do as a traveler helps conserve the species and these wilderness areas. So, yeah.
Our purpose is to create rich and meaningful connections. And the way that we do that is by enhancing lives through travel with a purpose. So we hope that you'll get a taste of that today. Some of the things that make us unique: we are long-term supporters of sustainable travel. We have one of the most thorough vetting processes in the industry. We have rich and meaningful connections, not only with our guests, but also with our partners on ground. We are thought leaders in our industry. The travel tech companies that we work with, as well as our partners, come to us because they value our experience. And I'll let you just quickly touch on Safari Pros and what you've done there.
Sure. About 6 years ago, I was one of the founding members of an organization called Safari Pros, which is a North American based group of advocacy. It's an advocacy group for people that are interested, or companies that are interested in promoting sustainable and conservation-based travel in Africa. And so I got together with 29 or 30 of my closest competitors, who I absolutely enjoy. And we've learned so much from each other, but it's that sort of think tank that enables us to do more together collectively for a continent that we all absolutely adore. And so whether you travel with us or one of those Safari Pro companies, you know you're in good hands. Another thing I want to touch on that Michann said just very briefly is, in terms of our partners in Africa, we don't work with destination management companies. We don't work with inbound tour operators who add no value to the chain. We work directly with people that actually own and manage the accommodation. So some of our partners are And Beyond, Wilderness Safaris, Asilia, and when we work with a camp, we tend to know who the managers are, who the guides are, who the owners are. So in terms of accountability and responsibility, we have them on speed dial, which makes a big difference when you are considering traveling long haul and going to a continent that is probably, 17 to 24 hours away. You want to make sure that you're in good hands with somebody that can make one phone call and resolve any issues that do crop up. So go ahead.
In terms of being in good hands, we're also travel insurance experts. We offer the best insurance from all the major carriers, and we can even help you file a claim. We've done that for a number of our clients. We guarantee our pricing in US dollars, and we have a 99% satisfaction rate, which is double verified with our internal surveys as well as published in Travel & Leisure's magazine when we won the world's best tour operator.
Yeah, that's I'm constantly watching that number because I'm so afraid that, you know, when you get to that number, the only way to go is down. So it's something that we're very mindful of, and for the 1%,
definitely something you have to maintain, which we very much intend on doing.
Yeah, we do. Go ahead.
We flew from Orlando, making our way to Johannesburg via Dubai so that we could take advantage of Emirates and their gorgeous business class. They have lie-flat beds. I could flip on my stomach and still lie comfortably, which was amazing. And for anybody who has,
and the entertainment, I mean, just, yeah, it's unbelievable. You know, there are more direct ways to get to Africa. United had a flight from Atlanta, South African Airways. But I'll tell you, hands down, Emirates business class
it's hard to beat.
It's really hard to beat, especially when you get to Dubai and you go to the champagne bar and enjoy some complimentary champagne from Moet Chanel.
I think I enjoyed the ice cream as much as the champagne.
Yeah, I think you did too.
So this is our entire trip. It took us a month to travel, which is the reason we're splitting this up into 2 series. We'll focus today on South Africa and Mozambique, basically the right half of this map on the left. And then our next series will be Namibia. So on the right side, we're flying southeast. We're going from Johannesburg to Richards Bay, which is about an 1.5-hour flight, and then driving north from there to Phinda, and that's an 45-minute drive. Phinda Private Game Reserve is a very special place because it started actually when it was purchased as a wasteland. This was in 1991. And since then, they have become well known for having one of the most successful wildlife reintroduction programs ever within a private game reserve.
And what Phinda did was actually started buying adjacent farms as well. The farmers, I mean, this land was not suitable for farming per se. So, and they reintroduced species that were endemic to this area. And one of the major things that Phinda has done is, and Michann will touch on it, is in terms of the breeding programs. So yeah, these are
so cute.
These are little kitty cats that just, you know, walk around Phinda. This is a mom and her 2 cubs just kind of hanging out, and they're so relaxed. Cheetah is the fastest land mammal, 100 kilometers an hour.
And they're specifically significant at Phinda because of, so Phinda is a 28,000 hectare reserve, and within that reserve, they have 7 unique ecosystems. And so these cheetah have the opportunity to adapt to all these different type of environments. And Phinda they were the first private reserve to introduce cheetah within South Africa. And then they have become the place that other reserves rely on to purchase cheetah to bring into other areas. And because of their vast difference in environments, it makes them extremely adept at moving into these other environments once they're purchased by other game reserves. And that has caused a huge increase in the population of cheetah within South Africa. Yeah,
the breeding program here is coordinated with veterinarians and scientists to make sure the genetic pool remains is able to adapt to different environments. So the cheetah from Phinda have thrived at all, you know, so many different private game reserves and reserves, national parks as well in many parts of Africa. But this was really special.
Like a bump.
Yeah, you can see this kitty cat was scowling at us. This is on a game drive. The wonderful thing about going on a game drive at Phinda is that you're in an open vehicle. This was not shot with a zoom lens. This was right outside of our vehicle. Mm-hmm. And this is how close you get to them.
Very close.
As you can tell, Michann likes cheetah.
I do. Skipped ahead, too much cheetah.
Yeah. So the king of the jungle, lions. Why don't you tell them a little bit more about this particular?
Sure, these are 2 brothers, and also part of the wildlife reintroduction, they made a point of introducing cheetah before they brought in lion to give cheetahs time to adjust and to build up their populations, and also to build relationships with each other, so that once the lion did come in, they would know where their hiding spots were and they could keep their cubs safe.
Yeah, lions will prey upon cheetahs, female cheetahs and cubs. And what this particular sighting was really interesting because we had gone into one of the thickets where the cheetahs were actually hiding because they knew the lions were around. And these two were just, they didn't care. They were just kind of hanging out. But again, such a magnificent opportunity. Yeah.
We're going to go through the accommodations quickly because we know you're more focused on the wildlife. And that reminds me, thank you to everybody who completed our survey. We bought a fancy new microphone. We've improved our setup because we really value your time. We're going to focus less on food, less on accommodations, more on wildlife because we're trying to deliver what you want. So thank you. We'll send another survey afterwards. Please keep the feedback coming.
So just so you know, you'll never have a bad meal on safari. Plan on putting on some weight. So lose weight before you go, because there's really no way that you're going to lose weight on safari. And the accommodations are incredible. I mean, you've got fine thread count sheets and just the majestic settings. On Phinda itself, I'll let Michann tell you a little bit more about the different types of accommodation on this reserve and the environment.
As I show you these accommodations, I'm going to focus more on the environment that they're in. For example, Forest Lodge in the top right, you can see this beautiful wooded area. This is a sand forest, and there are only 6,000 hectares of sand forest left in the entire world. 2,000 of those, so a third of the sand forest in the whole world, is located at Phinda. The other ones you can find are at, oh God, my pronunciation.
Fruitbos.
There you go.
And then in Brazil.
The Amazon rainforest, yeah. So Forest Lodge, really unique ecosystem versus Homestead on the other end of the reserve. You can see not as wooded, much more flat. This is our exclusive property compared to Mountain, Mountain Lodge in a beautiful mountainous region, and then Vlay, which is in that flat area. So the ecosystems are changing so much. It's really a fascinating reserve to spend time on.
Yeah, you could spend a week at Phinda, honestly, and just spend 3 nights at one property, and then 3 nights at another, or 4 nights at another, and it'll be a completely different experience. What you'll have is consistency in service and the rangers. The rangers are some of the most highly trained in all of Africa, and we'll get into that in a second.
Amazing herd of elephants who walk straight toward us. It was so special. And the elephants at Phinda, because the sand forest environment is so fragile, they control the population in a very humane way through an annual darting where they inject them with a birth control. And it's non-hormonal because they don't want it to affect the way that the elephants interact with each other. So the science in Phinda is so fascinating.
It is.
This is a species endemic to the sand forest. It's called a Sunit.
Sunit.
You know, you had an antelope named after you.
Well, Sunit. I've got a T, but yeah, and I'm not as small as he is. So
this guy, he's the size of a bunny rabbit. He's one of the smallest antelope species in the whole world. And I'm sorry to anybody that doesn't like bugs, but this is a very significant species of spider that was discovered 4 months before we arrived by, who was it?
By a guest, a model.
Yeah.
She went for a walk. Phinda Forest Lodge is one of the only ones that actually has an electric fence around the sand forest to ensure that the larger sort of species don't get in. So a certain section of it, you can go for a walk. And she went with a guide, and she happened to come across this spider that the guide had never seen before. So she actually made a scientific discovery while on the property. And that's the magic of Africa. We did ask why she didn't want to be named after, or the spider wasn't named after her, but I guess she said he's cute as a button. So I think that's why they named him
the Phinda button spider. It's the first widow species to be discovered in 29 years. My crappy picture on the left, which is why, courtesy of African Geographic, we have the picture on the right so you can actually see what it looks like. So this is coming out of the sand forest. So you can see it opens up into this beautiful meadow, and this is a straight shot, but I'm looking around and I'm seeing these butterflies floating from every angle. And I feel like I'm in this fairy tale land. It was beautiful. We have the impala. We saw so much wildlife. The elephant, which you'll see him kind of throw this mud up on himself. And what he's doing is he's using that as not only to cool down, but as a protective layer for his skin to ward off insect bites. I think he has a mouth shot in a second. He puts it straight into his mouth.
Or does he?
Wait for it.
Muddy water, I tell you.
Wildebeest. This is the Nyala. It looks similar to the kudu with the striping, but see that color change with the very light colored legs with that dark body? And I'll flip over so you can compare it. So this is a kudu, same sort of stripe, but you can tell full, there's no break in color.
It's more tan, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, right there in the grass.
It's a froggy pond.
Oh yeah, this was the evening. So cool.
The giraffe. The game at Phinda is off the charts. There's so much to see.
There's a lot to see, and in different parts of the reserve, there are different species. So this was a really special sighting for us. It was a rhino with its horn intact. Sometimes what they do is they do take off the horn. They dehorn them just for their protection. And this mama's with a calf, which is really interesting.
And the protection, that's to deter poachers from going after these, aren't they? Remove them so that they don't, aren't tempted.
Ooh.
Well, this is Romance in Africa. I hope you can hear us, but
Wow.
happy are at the watering hole.
Her eyes are just coming. Oh, is he trying to mate?
I was gonna say, is there a little action going
I
on
think
there?
he's trying something.
Our apologies if you have any
I
kids
think
watching.
you're right.
He's not trying to
No.
drown. He's trying to mount her.
So this is when we stop for our sundown.
Well,
And
she's
I've
not gonna be able to
never
breathe.
been before. In all the years that I've been living in Africa and even going on safari. So this is quite a special sighting.
Sorry, minor adjustment.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
So another special thing about Phinda is the walking safaris. Here, want to talk about them?
Yeah, and to go on a walking safari, you must be accompanied by a guide. And South Africa has their own government-run training, but what is significant about Phinda, for any guide to work at any game reserve in South Africa, you have to go through government training. Phinda requires an additional 6-month training, and that involves sleep deprivation, starvation. You have to walk 9 days by yourself. It's intense, and only 50% of the people make it through that program. And you just feel so confident walking with somebody who's gone through that level of training. And walking safaris are so special because you are driving in these game drives all day long and you miss the details that you pick up on when you have an opportunity to slowly walk through an area like this. Such as the fever tree on the left side. If you're familiar with gin and tonics, fever tree is a very popular brand of tonic, and it is named after this tree on the left.
Because it's got a quinine content, right?
Yeah.
So your favorite drink?
My favorite
drink.
Aside from wine.
Yeah. And then on the right, we've got the weaver bird nests. What they do is they come back to them season after season. So, watching them weave these is actually really fascinating as well.
The reason that gin and tonic is such a popular drink for safaris is because that ingredient you were talking about is, legend has it that it's supposed to ward off mosquitoes. So
yeah,
who knows how
unfortunately,
accurate that is.
Unfortunately, the strain of malaria now is quinine resistant. So
that is not your medication.
Yeah.
But I just like it as an excuse to drink a tonic. On the right are the fruits of the sausage tree. Those are eaten by baboons, monkeys, birds, and then herbivores will snack on the leaves of that tree.
That was a cool shot that you got there.
Yeah, I skipped it accidentally.
Oh, you skipped it again.
On the right, I took this picture of the ant trails, and I love this shot because it reminded me when I was flying over the Okavango Delta, looking down and seeing the elephant and the hippo trails. The same sort of pattern is mimicked with this ant shot, and it just reminded me how connections are so important because every part of the ecosystem does have relation to another part.
Yep.
The flower on the right may look insignificant. It is actually the second smallest orchid species in the world. That's cool.
Oh yeah, I didn't remember that.
Yeah. Grows off of these branches of the larger trees, but the orchid likes to plant itself there. Just beautiful details. You're not going to find this if you're on a game drive. You have to go on a walking safari to pick up on these things.
Oh, my favorite. The top right picture, they're called old man's balls. Is that what they're called? There's this particular caterpillar that uses it.
Oh, I forgot that.
Yeah, there's a particular moth or caterpillar that actually uses this plant and will safely sort of be cocooned in it away from birds.
You have a guinea fowl feather on the left.
Right.
The middle is a dark pansy butterfly. And then on the right is a dung beetle. You've probably seen videos of them. They'll walk backwards and they'll build these balls of dung.
Mm-hmm.
But what I didn't realize, this guy, he flew over us and I felt like I was in a sci-fi movie because he sounds like a drone. He's so loud.
They're
and he
very
lands.
loud.
He's like teeny little bug, but just the biggest sound. He really surprised me.
Yeah, they come across as being very fierce, but they're not really. So yeah.
They're just cute. I like bugs. My safari nickname is the bug girl.
Yeah.
So it's bugs. This is I'll let you talk about this.
Yeah, this is actually something that we were actually the first guests to experience this. A guide who had been on Safari Live in the Masai Mara was then hired by Phinda to come in and offer a different experience from any other reserve in the world. And what they do here is Phinda offers night game drives, but this was an infrared safari. So instead of using a spotlight to shine on an animal, because if they do spot something at night, they'll identify them using their eyes. And they don't like to shine the spotlight in the animal's face. So the infrared safari is something that's really cool. And we were the first guests to actually experience it. And since then, we've sent quite a few guests to Phinda. And this is the only place that I know of right now that offers this particular experience in Africa. So,
Yeah.
Michann, show them a little bit.
So they rig your normal vehicle that you're driving around in all day with this camera. And on the left, they have these screens. So you know how you typically have 3 rows of the vehicle? They'll mount this screen on each level. And so they'll completely shut off all the lights. It's pitch black. But because of the type of camera, you can see pretty clearly. I'll show you the video.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, this can just play in the background. So this is what we're seeing on the screen sitting in front of us.
Yeah,
Right,
serval.
this Genet.
Genet, sorry.
So they have the ringed tail. And it was amazing to see that because normally you would have scared it away. If you shine a light, he's gone.
Yeah.
So only because of this sort of game experience.
So this lioness and the cubs, and they were just so relaxed, hanging out. And typically on a game drive, they're going to be in thick grass in the evenings, and you can spot them, but you can't go off road. Now, this particular guide had a zoom lens, so he was able to zoom in. And when the evening drive begins, there's still daylight. So if you come across a bird species that you have been looking for or have never seen before, remember he was able to zoom in and show us some really cool bird species as well during daylight. So
when you purchase that package, not only do they shoot at night, and they have a videographer who will put together a video of your footage from your game drive for the daytime when it's light out and the night. So all day long, you can put your camera away, which was so relaxing to not have to worry about having a camera and knowing you're going to get professional videos afterwards.
Yeah.
It was really nice.
That's kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And they zoom in. So you don't mess with binoculars. You can see everything clearly.
Do you have sound on the next one?
Yeah.
Oh,
so this is a normal game drive. What we just did, the infrared, compared to this, a typical game drive where they have a red light.
Oh my God. Maybe watch out for the flash. Oh, the animal's over there.
Your line soars for miles. Crazy loud. They just pierce your soul. It's vibrating. It's really cool. We didn't have time to do everything at Phinda. I wish we could have stayed for a month just there.
Yeah.
But since we went there, they introduced this pangolin species. So they have researchers based at Phinda who they've introduced, I just blinked, pangolin.
They've introduced pangolin on the property and
they're tagged.
Yeah, they're tagged, and what they're doing is researching them because as you probably know, it's one of the most endangered species in the world now. And this particular virus is said to have originated from pangolin genetics mixed with bats. But Phinda is doing some great work with this, just like what they've done with cheetah and what they've done with rhino in the past. I think we're going to learn a lot about pangolin. And
It's unverified. Anything to help save a pangolin, I don't care if it's true or not. We should just help them anyway.
Yes. And then there are cultural activities available too. Phinda is located in KwaZulu-Natal, which is very rich in terms of cultural heritage. So if you wanted to experience going to a traditional village, a Zulu village, they can organize that for you. You can go scuba diving, you can go snorkeling. And it really is a phenomenal place, and definitely worth more than a 3-night stay. I recommend a week because you've got so much diversity on the reserve itself.
So it's safe to say we're sold on Phinda?
I think we are, yeah. So,
Bloopers.
do you have bloopers?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
A very rare sighting.
Oh, we do?
The 5-legged elephant.
Yeah, this is the 5-legged elephant.
Sorry, guys.
You want to
So
play that?
funny.
Yeah.
I hope you've had dinner.
He was really happy. And yeah, quite an interesting sight. Again, sorry, apologize if you've got kids watching. But yeah, he was a very, very happy elephant, as you can tell. I don't want to mess with that guy, I tell you. Cool. Well, that brings us to the end of our Phinda segment. And what I wanted to do was introduce someone very special who we were able to get to come on and tell us a little bit more about Phinda, because this man was a ranger at Phinda, and he's been featured on National Geographic, Discovery, NBC, and his name is James Curry. He's actually the brand ambassador for Wilderness Safaris, one of our strongest partner in Africa. And we are very, very pleased to have James join us this evening. He is an avid conservationist. He can talk to you about birds and all kinds of things. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to James.
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet everybody. And yeah, thanks for hosting this, Sunit and Becca. It's really, really great to see some of the videos and bring back some memories of actually by far my favorite place in the world is Phinda. I spent a number of years there, first as a guide in the 1990s, working at Phinda as a game ranger or a guide. And then after that, I spent a number of years working in the communities around Phinda Private Game Reserve and in that area, forging the link between communities and wildlife, because it's a very, very important part of what most of us do in Africa. Responsible operators in Africa and responsible lodge owners in Africa always make an effort to ensure that there are tangible benefits going back into the local communities around those wildlife areas. It's an essential part of conservation in Africa. And I really must applaud Alluring Africa. You guys choose the best partners to work with. And I'd like also just to mention quickly, those of you that are listening and planning a trip to Africa, Africa is not something that you can do on Expedia or booking.com. There's just so many moving parts. And while you might be able to do that for, let's say, Italy or France or Europe, just try do that with Africa and see where you end up. You'll be lucky to end up at the lodge that you're supposed to go to. So no, you guys do a fantastic job of choosing amazing partners, and I must applaud you for that. But yeah, my time at Phinda was one of the most special times of my life. I had incredible opportunities to get up close and personal with wildlife. Some of my favorite times were after we left our guests behind at the lodge and bid them farewell. Often our job would not end there, because we would go out on many nights, and I would go out and habituate leopards, for example. Leopards have always been at Phinda. They were not reintroduced there. We have some of the largest leopards in Africa are actually found on the Phinda property, very, very large leopards. And because they weren't so accustomed to people, we had to spend a lot of time after hours habituating leopards. And one of my favorite things was saying goodnight to the guests and then going out on a Land Rover, finding a leopard with my tracker and sitting there. And sometimes we would call the leopard up to the vehicle by mimicking sort of a dying animal. And then we'd just sit with that leopard and get closer and closer and get to know the different leopards around the property. So, you know, when you go there as a guest, know that there's a lot of work happening behind the scenes from the incredible guides and trackers that work at these destinations in Africa. You know, especially a shy creature like leopard, it takes a long time to get them accustomed to vehicles and to people, and done in a very sustainable and ethical way. And the same applies to cheetah. And to me, there's actually no better place on planet Earth to view cheetah than at Phinda Private Game Reserve. And you touched on some of that, Becca, and one of the most important reasons for the cheetah population doing so well at Phinda is the fact that there is a lot of thick bush on Phinda and thick forest where cheetahs are able to hide their cubs from predators like lions and leopards. And so they do very well at Phinda because they've got the open areas on which to hunt, but then they've also got incredible thick areas where they can hide their cubs. So some of my favorite times were watching cheetahs hunt at Phinda, spending time with, we had a pride male, a male lion at Phinda when I worked there in the 1990s. That was one of the largest male lion specimens in Africa at the time. And it was estimated that he weighed approximately 220 to 240 kilograms. And when we darted him, we weighed him at various times. So, you know, that's a 500-pound cat. And he was a massive lion. And then we also had a female, a lioness called the North Pride female. And she was one of the largest lionesses in Africa. And the two of them bred. And they produced this whole generation of lions that we now find at Phinda, which have incredible genes, very, very large lions, very strong. And a lot of those lions have been reintroduced to other parts of Africa, just like the cheetah have at Phinda as well. So it's been a fantastic time just sharing some stories with you and some highlights from Phinda. And if anybody has, I don't know if you're taking questions, Sunit, or if anybody would like to ask a question, I'd certainly be happy to answer anything.
We definitely are, and Becca's moderating. So if anyone has any questions for James, please feel free to ask. I also
just put them in the chat box and we'll see them.
And we'll see them. The other thing I wanted to mention is that James is going to give you a quiz, all of you a quiz. It's not going to be so difficult, but the first two respondents to that quiz will be the lucky recipients of a signed copy of his book. It's called When Eagles Roar. There it is. Okay, so while we're waiting, if there are any questions coming, James, why don't you ask a couple of, don't ask trick questions now. I know how you Rangers do it.
Sure, no worries. Okay, let's ask a couple of questions. So, and by the way, the book actually details some anecdotal stories of my time as a guide at Phinda. So it's quite fitting that we're giving away this book tonight on behalf of Alluring Africa. So a couple of questions for you. The first question is, name 3 large cat species that can be found on Phinda Private Game Reserve. Name 3 large cat species that can be found on Phinda Private Game Reserve.
Okay.
We have Tim, cheetah, leopard, lion.
Absolutely. Leopard, lion. Okay.
He's a winner. He's a winner.
Well done. Well done. If I was drinking tonight, I would say cheers. And then
why don't you have a glass, James?
You know what? You know, this lockdown, not lockdown, but this stay-at-home order is quite hard on the liver, Sunit. I'm taking a break tonight.
Cheers, Neha. We got a number.
Let's get on to the second question. The second question is, name the family of spider that was rediscovered on Phinda recently by a model.
Wow. I don't know that one.
Button Widow, Angie.
Is it?
Does that
Who's
count?
the winner?
Was that rediscovered? I mean, was that rediscovered?
Discovered,
But-
sorry.
Discovered.
Discovered.
Okay. What was it?
It's the Phinda button spider.
Phinda button spider. Yeah, the
Button
Phinda.
widow.
Button
Well,
widow.
it is-
Yeah.
it
I
is
think
hot
we'll go with
button.
that. Yeah.
I think
This is not Jeopardy. It's fine. It's all right. Yeah.
go,
Button
Andy.
widow.
Yeah.
Go. You got it.
Well done. Okay, so I'll be sending 2 signed copies of my book across to you. Any of you others that would like to read about some stories of a game ranger in Africa, you're welcome to find the book. It's called When Eagles Roar, and it's on Amazon. So really nice to join you all. I look forward to listening to the rest of your presentation, Becca and Sunit. And thanks everybody for joining us.
James,
James-
I have one more thing
Yes.
for you. You are one of my heroes with everything. First of all, is your start as a guide and everything you've accomplished since then. Your work is incredible, and we're so grateful to have you. He's an in-demand speaker, so for us to have James with us today is a big deal. And I wanted to highlight some of the things that you've been doing recently. So if it's okay, can we show a copy of your trailer for
Actually,
your documentary?
yes. Why don't we show that, and then we can talk a little bit more about it.
Okay.
James, hold on a second, guys. Watch this. This is really cool. It's called this is a trailer of Last of the Big Tuskers. So.
Elephant with huge tusks are most prized by poachers. Chinese and Vietnamese dealers move ivory by the ton.
Custom can check less than 1% of the cargo passing through Hong Kong, and we have already seized 33 tons of ivory.
We are losing species. For what? For trinkets, for ivory bangles, for rubbish.
Anti-poaching teams find themselves in war zones, and elephant numbers keep dropping.
Over a 7-year period, Africa has lost 144,000 elephants. That's 30% decline, driven by the ivory poaching crisis.
Super tuskers, elephants with tusks estimated to weigh 100 pounds or more, are becoming almost impossible to find.
There were hundreds of 100-pounders 60, 80, 100 years ago. Why do we only have 20 to 30 now?
To find out, and to actually see some of the last big tuskers left on Earth, I traveled to Tembe and Kruger Park in South Africa, and Tsavo and Amboseli in Kenya. For the first time, scientists explain the crucial role super tuskers have in elephant genetics. And we meet some of the legends.
We've been looking for him all day, and Isilo came to us.
Gentle Isilo, aggressive Craig, the approachable Mastulel, elusive Camboyo, secretive Wantan, and the formidable Tim. We see the knife edge of real human-animal conflict.
They want to kill him.
And we try to help.
We are going into the sixth extinction because of us. What a legacy. We haven't even learnt their language, and we killed them.
Yeah. James, thank you for, and if you'd like to say a few words about that particular movie, you're more than welcome to, and then I'm just going to go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Sunit. So, the film really features the plight of the last remaining big tuskers on our planet. And when I started the film in 2014, there were believed to be only 40 super tuskers left in Africa. Those are elephants with tusks heavier than 100 pounds a side, 100 pounds either side or both sides. And when I finished the film in late 2017, I was really saddened to learn that there were only 22 left. And so they are very imperiled. And not only that, but the film also goes into some detail as to the fact that elephants are losing their elephantness. If you can put it that way, the fact that elephants are actually becoming entirely tuskless in Africa. There are populations in Africa where they have, 66% tuskless elephants. And it essentially means that there are populations of African elephants that are handicapped because they use their tusks for a variety of functions. So the film really details that. It's a conservation film. And I believe we will be doing a special web broadcast of the film, and I'm going to be doing a talk on the last of the big tuskers, I believe next Wednesday at 7. Is that correct, Sunit?
That's right. And James, again, thank you for taking the time to do that with us. We really are so grateful. As all of you probably know that have been following our virtual happy hour series, Michann and I will be speaking about Namibia next week on Tuesday, but on Wednesday evening at 7 p.m., James is going to do a special presentation for us on this particular movie and the making of it. I mean, James, growing up in Kenya, I remember seeing Ahmed, with the huge tusks. They've got him in bronze at the National Museum in Nairobi, and they were not rare, and it's almost like survival of the species, where the elephants are having, I guess the larger bulls were killed off. So now the surviving gene or the genetics, you don't get to see that many large tusked elephants. So thanks for your good work in making us aware of that. And again, thank you for joining us this evening. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you all very much.
Sorry, do we have a question?
Couple questions, yeah.
Yeah.
Are there caracals or servals in the reserve?
Caracals and servals.
Yes, they are. They're actually both species at Phinda. And I'm not sure of exactly how common they are today, but when I was at Phinda, an exceptionally rare sighting would have been either species, a caracal or a serval, but they definitely are present on the reserve, yes.
Then from Brennan, is the Chinese government doing anything positive to stop the poaching of elephants, rhino, and pangolin?
Well, yes and no. So, there's been a lot of pressure recently, actually from the youth within China, because a lot of the successful movements on the ivory, banning the ivory trade, have been directed at the youth in China, because that's where the solution to this problem lies. So there's been a lot of pressure from the youth in China that are engaged in the fact that only elephants should wear ivory and not people. And they've put a lot of pressure on the government, and not only on the government, but their own families. So remember, in Chinese culture, especially in the more affluent Chinese cultures, it's very commonplace for people to sit down at dinner and eat their dinner with ivory chopsticks, for example. And so it's the youth sitting down at that family dinner and going, Mom, Dad, we don't need this. You don't need to have ivory chopsticks anymore. So I think there's a lot of pressure that's happened. There have been obviously a lot of bans, ivory bans in China that have taken place recently, but it still happens under the table. And what we've found has happened with the ivory trade is that, once China introduced an ivory ban, unfortunately, the market opened up in places like Vietnam and other places in the East. So, and let's not also forget, and I don't want to sound like we're being hypercritical of China here, because let's not forget that the United States was one of the biggest dealers in ivory for many, many years until, recently. Obviously, it happened a lot quicker than it has happened in the East, but certainly we cannot wash our hands in the West and say that, we were amazing proponents of banning ivory, because we weren't. The UK, the United States, there was a big ivory trade that happened here too.
Well, James, ivory is one part of it. I think the other big problem that we have in the United States is that the largest trophy hunting market in the world is the US. And in terms of elephants being shot or being culled, I think that a lot of the trophy hunters are also responsible for that. And it's not like they're coming from China or Vietnam to go hunting. The trophy hunters will spend, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on hunting an elephant that is considered a rogue elephant, and it doesn't matter what size the tusks are. They're doing it for a trophy. So, I agree. I think at the end of the day, China, yes, there's got the demand for ivory, but we also have this insatiable demand for trophy hunting in the United States, and that's something that we should probably want to address. Sorry, I didn't mean to be so controversial, but
no, it's a very, very good point. And in fact, you know, trophy hunting is one of the reasons why we don't have large tusked elephants in Africa anymore. It's as simple as that. It's a form of human-induced evolution. The fact that elephants have lost the gene or the propensity or the genetics for large ivory. It's 100% due to ivory poaching and obviously hunting as well, selective hunting.
more questions?
We do have a couple other questions.
Yep.
Sure.
Sneha, hi Sneha. Have you seen pangolin at Phinda?
I've never seen a pangolin at Phinda.
They were just reintroduced recently.
They were just reintroduced, and there were reports. There's been a report of pangolin sightings very close by to Phinda in a place called Tembe Elephant Park. How reliable those sightings are, we're not too sure yet. But I will tell you, it's amazing what wildlife is at Phinda that wasn't reintroduced there, and that's always been there. For example, you know, a lion was shot right outside the gates of Mountain Lodge in the late 1980s that had come down through Mozambique. So the wildlife's kind of always been there. The leopards were always there. There've been reports of cheetah and Mkuzi. We had wild dog that came onto the property at Phinda and stayed there for a while and then disappeared, came under the fence. So it is a very fluid situation. It's a very wild wilderness area, that part of the world. And I remember seeing, one of my highlight sightings was seeing a mother honey badger with two tiny, tiny little babies next to the road. And it was something you hardly ever see at Phinda. But, you know, camera traps at Phinda have revealed brown hyena, spotted hyena have always been there. They were not reintroduced to Phinda. But brown hyena is an incredibly rare creature that's normally only found sort of on the coast region. And yet we found them on camera traps at Phinda. So yeah, it's a remarkable area. And the diversity of habitats, those 7 different ecosystems that Michann was talking about now, it really lends itself to a whole variety of different species. And I won't be surprised if they discover, you know, 1 or 2 new species of butterfly or plant. I know I've got a friend that still lives on Phinda called Ross, and he's always finding new plant species, for example. So it's a very, very rich area.
Well, speaking of the new species, Gavin had asked, what is the Phinda spider or the button spider? The Phinda button spider is that new species that we saw when we were there. He asked, is it venomous? The last I heard, they were still waiting on the toxicology reports. So it is a widow species. I would assume it is poisonous.
Probably for babies. But Gavin, you don't have to worry.
Because it's taken so long to discover it, it likes to burrow deep in these burrows. I wouldn't worry about getting bit.
Yeah,
we just spotted it for the very first time on Planet Earth, so I think you'll be okay. But
yeah,
probably poisonous.
That was really a highlight sighting for us. So, but James, again, thank you. And are there any more questions for James? One more question. Okay.
From Hero. Are elephants evolving to have smaller or no tusks? We saw a few in Kenya with no tusks.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely they are. Sadly, you know, if you go to places like Mozambique, Uganda, South Africa, you'll find populations of elephants that are becoming almost entirely tuskless. Addo Elephant Park is probably the best known example in the Eastern Cape of South Africa, where over 90%, well over 90% of the elephants there have no tusks. The female elephants on that property. And then if you go up into Gorongosa in Mozambique, you're looking at about 60 to 66% completely tuskless. And then you go to Queen Elizabeth Park in Uganda, where the tusklessness is approaching around 30% of the population there. So the normal standard healthy percentage of tusklessness in an elephant population will be about 3%. So that really puts it into perspective when you start doing the math and looking at how that gene for not only large ivory, but for tusks itself, is rapidly being wiped out in elephant populations. And it's the reason why I did the film is I don't want my kids and my grandkids to, and my grandkids' kids to go to a zoo one day and to see elephants without tusks. And it's not an elephant to me.
Oh.
Thank you so much, James.
James, thank you, guys. You know, we didn't realize how many questions there'd be about elephants today. So next Wednesday, please tune in.
Yeah.
We'll have a full happy hour devoted to James and his quest to bring to the world's attention
We'll
the plight
send
of
the
the
email
elephant.
invites
We will.
out like
We'll
we
be
have.
sending out email invites. We'll we'll make sure that it's posted on Facebook. But again, we're very grateful that you were able to join us. Please, definitely next Wednesday, do not join us without a glass in your hand. If I have to come down to where you are, I'm going to deliver. I'm going to hand deliver it.
No problem. We'll do a gin and tonic for sure.
Perfect.
Thank
Cheers,
you,
James.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Bye.
Everyone else, again, that was phenomenal. We're so pleased that James was able to join us. The second part of our presentation this evening is about Mozambique. And Mozambique was a war-torn country that unfortunately had they went through so much over a period of 15 to 20 years. And it's coming back. And Michann and I made it a point to actually focus on Mozambique as one of the emerging destinations within Africa. Right now, from a wildlife standpoint, it's not doing as well, but Africa Parks is making a big effort in Gorongosa.
It's early stages.
Early
It'll
stages.
be a while before, but there are many other reasons which we'll show you to go there now.
I mean, just a brief sort of description of Mozambique. Mozambique was a Portuguese colony. So don't be surprised when you go there and you find, like, you come from South Africa and people have Zulu names and Xhosa names, etc. And then you go to Mozambique and people have these Portuguese names like Diego, or and their cuisine is very, very, it's got a Portuguese influence to it. So now, okay, you go right ahead. Okay, sorry about that, guys.
We're driving north from and beyond about 3 hours. We're crossing the border from South Africa to Mozambique.
Paved road. I mean, pretty much outside
road.
of, this was a very easy drive. And for those that like to fly from point A to point B, I would highly recommend this drive. This was a scenic drive.
It was a nice drive.
Absolutely flawless sort of border clearance. And then, went on. I would say the last 4 or 5 miles before we got to White Pearl were a little rough. It was like, it reminded me of being a child in Kenya and going to a beach resort where you actually have to go through a road that is not paved and it's got potholes. But when you get to the end of it, it is absolutely magical. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is the view from White Pearl Resort, where we stayed for the next couple of nights. Perched up on a hillside, just gorgeous views looking into the ocean. Very beautiful location.
This is the Indian Ocean, and it's the water's warmer. It's some of the best diving, snorkeling in this particular area. And the White Pearl Resort, what I will tell you is that if you're looking for high-end, Four Seasons, Anantara, that sort of thing, if you're looking for that, unfortunately, they're not there yet. However, what is so charming about it is the local flavor. The people are amazing. The hospitality was beyond sort of reproach. The cuisine was also very, very good. But
the breakfast spreads were memorable. I mean, I'm trying not to not talk a lot about food, but if I look back on this trip and think of a memorable meal, their breakfast spreads were just massive and every day.
But for a population, when you look at it, a lot of the well-educated were actually killed during the war in Mozambique. So you've got people that are retraining and are new to hospitality, but hospitality is in their blood. And they're very, very kind, generous people. Every single person we encountered, from the gardener to the chef to, they actually did not refer, a lot of properties refer to someone who takes care of you as a butler. They actually refer to them as hosts, which I thought was definitely more appropriate.
Yeah.
And our host was this young lady who was just so excited to have this job. And she didn't want to make a single mistake. And I think after the first couple of days, we're like, chill out, it's okay, it's no problem. You make a mistake, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But they took really good care of us. So this is a place that's more of an eco-resort. It's represented by a friend of ours, Warren Green, who really likes to look at emerging markets and sustainable tourism. And White Pearl is not where you want to go if you're looking for sort of, like I said, Four Seasons. But if you're looking for barefoot luxury, this is a great place. And Michann will tell you a little bit more about what the offerings are here.
We arrive and they start to explain the activities. Right away, we're sold on what they explain is an ocean safari because we had the opportunity to swim with wild dolphins.
Yes.
It was incredible. On the bottom, I included this picture so you can see the boat there. That's what they took us out on. They dragged us right out straight into the ocean.
You got to be adventurous. This Zodiac is really bumpy, but anyway.
So you have to get out past, you can see these bigger waves. It's a little rocky to get out, but once you get past what you see here, it's really nice to see.
And that's the resort.
Rooms.
Yeah. I mean, those are the views, the vistas. There's nothing next door. It's incredible. You're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. And it was very much like this picture. So we get past that rocky part. We're now into the smooth water and we're scoping. We're trying to find our wild dolphins. And finally they're like, there. And so everybody falls backwards, which is a little unnerving, but I don't snorkel often. So that was one of the things that I wish had been just explained a little bit better. But once we got in the water, it was phenomenal. Yeah. It was incredible. The dolphins were swimming around us.
It
was
so
completely
curious.
Wild.
And the guide that was with us, these dolphins knew him.
Yeah.
He was actually calling out to them and they were coming near us. They were so curious and playful.
Yeah.
It was really an experience of a lifetime to be in the ocean with these wild, incredibly intelligent mammal species was a highlight. I mean, if anyone is interested in that sort of experience, up close where you're not petting anything, but they're coming up to you and they're dancing with you and they're twirling with you, this is the place to go.
I've wanted to swim with dolphins for a long time, but I really don't like the staged experiences.
The Mexico stuff,
I haven't done even SeaWorld, anything like that. This fulfilled my bucket list in the best way possible.
And they tell you before you leave, they do tell you that, you know what, I mean, it depends on your luck. Mm-hmm. You may not see them. They're not baited in any way.
Yeah.
And it's a completely natural experience. So
it makes it way more special when it does happen. This is our room. You can see a little bit in the corner, our outdoor pool there. Outdoor shower is around the corner to the left there by the bathtub. Very comfortable, large, spacious.
They really want you to be clean here. They give you like a tub and an outdoor shower and whatever. I mean,
well, you're in and out of the ocean.
Yeah, that's true.
Speaking of the ocean, they have hundreds of crabs running all along the Michann. I'm so happy that I'm chasing all of them. It was just a special place.
And Michann,
there you go. There you go. Woo. Mr. Crab.
Don't worry.
Really, Miss Crab. Mrs. Crab.
Oh. See, do you remember this thing on the other crab?
Yeah.
That plate?
Yeah.
Now it's really wide because its legs go beneath it.
Ah.
So it's long and skinny. That's a male.
Hold on.
Look at how his eyes pulled back into his head.
Her eyes, yeah.
Here, baby. Don't pick up anything. More creepy crawlies. Look at the heart shapes that they put into the sand. Just cute, thoughtful, romantic setting. This dinner.
In the wine cellar was really cool.
I'm only talking about because it was memorable. This, I don't know if you can tell, look at the floor of this room. It's all sand.
Yeah.
And being in a wine cellar, candlelight, it was so romantic. You surprised me, actually. It was so good job. It was really nice. And the food was amazing. It was one of the best meals of the whole trip.
You know, despite me surprising you, you can't even say my name right. It's Sunit. It's not.
Not the Sunni?
No.
Sorry.
It's, okay, go ahead. So this is a cultural experience at the beach. You know, it's really cool. Very authentic and just fun.
Gorgeous. Yeah. Now we're driving north from White Pearl. About 2 hours to Palana. So we talked about Mozambique being a newer, emerging sort of destination. And one of the reasons that it's become such a great time to go now is because of this new Maputo bridge that was completed recently. This decreased our travel time by 3 hours. So think about the benefit on tourism, especially for us, but also for locals and making the city more accessible for them. This is a huge benefit to our trip to have this in place now.
And Maputo is really a very, very cool city. I mean, it reminds me of Nairobi, probably 20 or 30 years ago, where you've still got the sort of colonial architecture. It's not, the population is not ridiculous. You feel safe. walking around at night. We went to the French Cultural Center and went to a party there. And
it's a vibey city.
It's a very vibey city. And there's a lot of expatriates that are in town because of the oil and gas industry. The Polanas Arena was a phenomenal hotel to stay at.
That's 5-star. It's supposed to be the nicest place.
Yeah, it's a historic
Mozambique.
property.
Maputo, that's where we
Yeah,
stayed.
and Tim Farrell.
Right on the Maputo Bay, really beautiful setting.
Yeah, just the hospitality was great. The food was amazing. They had a power cut on one of the days, but the way these guys managed it was just amazing. Like, you know, the backup generator wasn't working, but they still managed to get a whole full breakfast out for us in, you know, in the morning.
It was in most of the hotels, just unfortunately the section we were in.
Yeah, the section we were in. So, but you can see the Portuguese influence. I mean, the tiles, as you walk through the city, this is a very walkable city. Not a lot of people spend time in Maputo, but I would say that it's definitely worth a couple of nights stay if you're going to go all the way to Africa. And this is
also a major Art Deco influence in architecture there.
Yes.
This is the Church of Santi Antonio de Polana. They have, so Time magazine named Maputo Central Station the 3rd most beautiful train station in the entire world in 2016. I thought that was a big deal.
That is a big deal. I didn't know that. I mean,
Yeah.
we went there, but it was, you know, if you're a train buff and you want to look at some old locomotives, this place is very cool, the Dow Cafe.
Yeah.
My cousin, who actually happens to work she's stationed in Mozambique, she told us about this place, and this is where all the sort of expatriates hang out. Tim Farrell had told us about this place too.
He did, yeah.
And
I'm
really,
gonna turn the, we love the music here. Get a sense of our experience there. Hold on.
hospitality. Then we went to this place called Stuffy, and they had a fashion show.
Yes. We had fashion. We had a singer. It was really nice.
It was really cool. And we're just going to stop here because there is another part of the Mozambique presentation. I know we've gone a little long today, but for those that want to stay on, we're here. For those that can't, don't worry. This is going to be recorded, so you can always take a look at it later.
This is the, I know we're longer, I'm sorry. This is the end of, we're almost done, promise.
We're almost done, but you know what? It was such a privilege to have James here today. And I wanted to give him as much time as we needed. And we can tell that people are obviously very, very enthusiastic about elephants. And to actually have someone that worked there, I think was quite a privilege for us.
Yeah.
Anyone got any questions for us?
Before we move on.
Before we move on
White
to
Pearl.
White Pearl, there's another whole area that we're going to go to that is amazing. Okay, doesn't look like anyone's got any questions right now. Do we see anything? We're good. Okay, cool. So we're going to move on. And this is actually, again, going to a beach resort, but more sort of geared towards honeymoons, maybe even, romance, or we went to an area called Benguela. And
so we're flying now from Maputo to Vilanculos. This is a 1 hour, 15-minute flight. And when we get there, we have to take a helicopter from Vilanculos Airport to Benguela Island.
One of the most incredible helicopter flights. Anyway,
it was like 5-10 minutes, like fast.
Yeah, it's like a 10-minute flight. It's on a Airbus helicopter for anyone that is interested.
I didn't include the video because I didn't film it well. It was too hungry. But if you look at this map, you can see the gorgeous water that we're flying over. I mean, I wish it was an hour-long flight. It was stunning.
This is definitely one of the most pristine parts of the coast of Africa.
Yeah.
And Africa Parks is now in charge of Benguela Island and that whole reserve. So, and our first stop was at Azura. Azura is on Benguela Island.
Like picture perfect, toes in the sand, sort of beach.
Hemingway style, yeah.
Yeah, very relaxing. This was our Dow sunset cruise the night that we arrived. And this guy on the left, he's rubbing together this local plant that turns into this soapy sort of texture. And that's what locals will use for shampoo and things like that.
So if you're looking for an incredible beach getaway, that's not just, you know, typically like what you might have seen in the Caribbean or anywhere else. This is really untouched. I mean, they catch their seafood fresh. You've got these massive jumbo prawns that come out, the lobster, different types of fish. And it's like a Robinson Crusoe type experience where you feel like there's no one around. And, you know, the little sala that you have outside of each room, what you see on the bottom left-hand side.
Right outside of our room.
And then there's a private picnic setup that they did for us. So we went out snorkeling and we went to Bazaruto, remember, for the day, and we climbed the dune, which was a lot of fun. So Bazaruto is right across from Benguera. And that's where there's another resort called the Alantara on the other side of the island. But it is absolutely pristine. I mean, and the reef is so close sorry, go back.
Hold on. This is 2 Mile Reef. Yeah. This was my favorite snorkeling spot of the whole trip because I saw a clam. I felt like I was in a Little Mermaid, like the size of my head, huge. I saw a turtle, so many fish.
Oh yeah, you spotted the loggerhead,
And it's this long stretch of, you can see kind of the waves breaking over this coral reef, which is 2 miles long.
And a lot of divers go across the reef on the other side for more deep sea diving.
But very smooth waters, easy, no, not much of a current at all. Just really nice.
And the guides were amazing too. This is a crocodile-infested lake in the middle of of Benguera.
I included the panel on the top, so we had to hike up this sand dune. Which, remember this on the way up? There's these broken pieces of pottery or things. People used to live there, and I don't remember how old they were, but they were very old. And the views were incredible. It was really exciting for us because we're pumped about our trip to Namibia, and obviously they're famous for their sand dunes. And we're hiking up this, and just the anticipation is building for the next portion of our trip.
So this is the kind of thing that they do, you know, it's a surprise and delight. And at night, they set up a private dinner for us outside of our room, chalet. And it was actually a lot of fun. Beautiful African sky with the stars, and I think it was a full moon or something that evening. But
I just got distracted because
so much fun.
2 questions I saw come through. Angelina, is this better than the Seychelles?
It's different. It's different. The Seychelles are granitic outcrops, and you've got, I mean, it's a very remote part of Africa. This is mainland. This is just off the mainland. And it's definitely more cost effective and easier to combine with a vacation in South Africa or Botswana or Zimbabwe, you know, or anywhere in Southern Africa. Mozambique, I think Mozambique is more of an emerging destination. The Seychelles has actually perfected hospitality, and they, you know, big difference is that they charge in the euro. They charge in euros. Everything in the Seychelles is imported.
We charge in US dollars, but just
no. And Mozambique actually works on the US dollar system. So you'll find that Mozambique, you get more bang for your buck, in my opinion. If you're looking for an island getaway and you want to be away from everyone and you want to go diving or snorkeling or even water sports or just kick back and relax, there's really no need to go to the Seychelles. But if you like to go fishing, Seychelles is really well known for deep sea fishing. It's also a very romantic spot that's very remote and quite a bit more expensive than Mozambique. I think Mozambique is definitely much easier to incorporate in an itinerary.
If you want beach and beach, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I hope that answers your question. If you have any more, let us know.
Thank you, Samantha, for joining us. Let's see. Okay, so now we're taking our helicopter back from Azora to Santorini, and you'll understand why it's called that. I'm going to show you these pictures. It's beautiful, beautiful property.
This had to be the highlight of my trip.
It felt like home away from home.
Benguera Island was phenomenal. I mean, I cannot say anything negative about Azora. It was just amazing. But the hospitality at this particular place, Santorini, is one of the best kept secrets in the world. Yeah. It's managed by an English couple. Well, she's English and he's from South Africa, I think. And the level of detail here was incredible.
It
I mean,
stood out.
I
think they have full-time people that run around with buckets of white paint just to make sure that everything remains spotless.
Yeah, you know, when I first got there, I'm like, why did you name it Santorini? That's in Greece. And they said, well, you know, look at the architecture, and don't let Santorini be turn you off and say, well, that's a misnomer. This place should be the real Santorini, in my opinion. I mean, the hospitality here is incredible.
Yeah, I didn't know how normally we would gravitate towards a more authentic place.
African sort of, but this place fit right in.
And I was like, okay, I get it. Never mind.
Yeah,
Sold.
The attention to detail at this particular property, it's on the mainland. It's just about 30 or 40 minutes north of the airport. And what we really liked about it was the fact that you can indulge in all of the island type activities. Like if you wanted to go scuba diving or snorkeling, they can take you on day trips. They've got their private boats and everything else. This place really is nice, incredibly exclusive for that top end guest that really wants exclusive use and wants to be pampered and feel like they're really the only people on the property.
Before this video ends, this is our room.
This is the
we
chapel.
Were staying in the
yes,
chapel. It's a 2-bedroom villa, but all this space was for the two of us. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, Michann must have told them beforehand that I like my space. So
so they have the main building, and this is its own separate building. And there's a full kitchen, so you could stay in this villa and have complete privacy. There are some other hotels whole rooms in the main building, and there's another off to the right side. So they have a good mix of if you want to have more local people to talk to at night over dinner, or if you want to be just by yourself.
Yeah, the nice thing about this place is that if you do want to engage with other guests, no problem. I mean, that's fine. You can just go into the main, sort of main quarters. But we went snorkeling here too with the current. This was so cool.
So compared to Tuma Reef, where there's not much current at all, you could get in the water here and you could just lay there and the current just drifts you along. It's the effortless snorkeling experience.
Yeah, for the real lazy snorkeler like me.
So this is the top of the wall, and it goes down to the ocean floor. So it has all these nooks and crannies where you can find all sorts of things in.
We saw a lot of fish. It was unbelievable.
Me and my critters.
Oh yeah, Michann and her critters. Every day, our host was amazing here. Every day, he had a special message for us on our butter.
Yeah,
that's the way butter should be served, by the way.
But just a perfect example of the
attention to detail.
You say that a lot, but this place stands out for this reason. They really do set a high bar.
Yeah, there are properties in Africa. I mean, all the properties that we feature, all the accommodations are amazing, but there's certain people that just, I don't know, they just go the extra mile. They just do something. I think they get it. I mean, they get into your head and they know exactly what, turns you on and really makes it such a memorable experience for you. And I think the people at Santorini have just nailed it. They just are unbelievable.
Home away from home.
Yeah.
Felt so comfortable.
Oh, geez. That was a tough place to leave.
It was.
It was
but
really tough.
We had to leave. We flew back.
And now we're in self-quarantine. What are we going to do? I wish I was in Santorini.
So we took the heli back 5-10 minutes to Vilanculos Airport. That's a 20-minute drive up and down. So we drove there, drove back, and now we're flying an hour, 45 minutes back to Johannesburg. And we're staying in the Saxon. I think we just stayed for one night, just had the most amazing dinner ever.
Yeah, Michann just knows how to make the evening really fun by making all kinds of faces. But anyway.
Quick overnight stop, and then we're on our way to Namibia.
With the motley crew. I have to tell you, most of the people that you see here in this picture are from our Safari Pros group.
Yeah.
And there's Paul Swart and Julian and Mary Jean Irachi and Sylvia from AAC.
Sorry.
And we were hosted by Wilderness Safaris and that really tall individual that you see in the background. And then the guy trying to say something behind my head. Both of them are from Wilderness Safaris and really good friends. And it was an amazing trip. So we look forward to telling you more about it next week. I'm really sorry we've gone over our time today. We've gone over about 10 or 15 minutes. We meant to keep this to a happy hour, but I guess there's a lot of
surprise
content.
from James, which we hope was worth it, but that's why we ended up running a little bit over.
Thank you for tolerating both of us. If you have any questions, we're more than happy to answer them.
Yeah.
If not, we wish all of you good health and stay safe. And if you need to contact us, you know how to get a hold of us. Hello at Alluring Africa, or some of you might even have our individual email addresses. But it's Michann at Alluring Africa, Sunit at Alluring Africa, Becca at Alluring Africa, Liz at Alluring Africa. Yeah.
There are first names if you want the spelling.
Yeah.
I know mine's hard.
But thanks again for joining us, and I hope
we do have some questions.
We do.
From Brennan. What are your top 3 favorite properties in all of Africa? Oh my goodness! You guys
Brennan,
not make it easy.
Is that Brennan Reimer?
Brennan Marilla.
Okay.
I said that right.
Okay. I thought it was my friend Brendan, and I thought it was a trick question. Top 3 properties.
Serikafema, which will show you Namibia.
Oh wow! Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think Liz and Becca would say Magashi. Or Bisati in Rwanda. And I would say that's a really tough one. Depends on where.
Yeah.
In Botswana, I didn't say Mambo. Mambo is the place of plenty.
You can't go wrong with Mambo.
I mean, the game viewing is absolutely off the chain. Like, there's just no place like it in the world.
And Brennan said also best location for wildlife, which...
Well, it depends on the season, and it depends on where you're going. I think Kenya and Tanzania are a sure bet. Like, if you have the Serengeti and Mara ecosystems, they are absolutely prolific. Then you've got places in Southern Africa, like Hwangi. Hwangi, I have never seen that many elephant, except for Botswana, in the Linyanti. But I would say that Botswana, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Tanzania, and in South Africa, Phinda and the Sabi Sand. The Sabi Sand is not one, I would say that any private game reserve that's adjacent to Kruger National Park in the Sabi Sand, Mala Mala is our favorite. And then there's Singita.
It's the biggest.
It's the largest, and they've got the largest sort of boundary with Kruger National Park.
And they have the river flooding. There's a number of reasons why Mala is amazing.
Yeah. And then there's another place called Jabulani that we really love. If you really want to see how orphaned elephants are rehabilitated, Camp Jabulani does an amazing job, and almost 36 to 37% of their revenue that they garner goes towards direct conservation, which is a really large percentage.
Yeah.
So I think, depending on when you're going, who's going, what is the makeup of your group, we can give you some tips on, most people don't just want to go for, 2 or 3 weeks and just wildlife.
Yeah.
Because you have to remember that when you go to places like Phinda, you've got walking safaris. Yeah. Then if you go to Zambia, the ultimate walking safaris are in South Luangwa, and you want to go there between June and November.
They say that Zambia is the home of the walking safari.
Well, yeah, Zambia everyone likes to talk about that, but happy to chat with you offline about that. I mean, again, depending on your needs.
Brendan said that he went on a Alluring Africa trip to Tanzania last year, trip of a lifetime. Awesome. So glad you had a good time. Then thank you, Cindy, for joining us. Tanzania is next Tuesday. Namibia webinar is to be determined. Yes, the Tanzania webinar is next Tuesday.
Oh, it is. It's not Namibia.
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
But Namibia is definitely coming.
Well, join us next week, because Tanzania is going to be hosted by Liz and Abigail, who went on a trip together about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And I think that that's going to be a really fun webinar, because those two girls, I mean, geez, I had to keep an eye on them when they were traveling. And they had a lot of fun. They met so many cool people. And Liz and Abigail will be able to tell you about the chimpanzees at Rubondo, the chimpanzee habituation program that's going on there. And then just the prolific sort of wildlife they saw in the Serengeti, Ngorongoro, Tarangire. So
Don says, we went to Tanzania with Alluring Africa in 2018. Was definitely the trip of a lifetime. Amazing. Yes.
Oh, thank you. we'll send you that $100 certificate. We really appreciate that, and we hope that when this is all over, Africa needs all of us. I mean, really, what we're deathly afraid of is the fact that the world's come to a standstill, and the poaching is going to be rampant. There are people that are jobless now, and the bush meat trade may start up again. So do remember that for us at Alluring Africa, tourism equals conservation. Tourism done right is conservation. Mm-hmm. So when you book with us, we're very, very particular about where we will send you, because we don't like people that greenwash things. We want people that are doing something that are, like I mentioned, Camp Jabulani, 36% goes towards the plight of those endangered wildlife.
And maybe everybody knows this, but I hadn't heard the term greenwashing before I started here. So do you want to?
Greenwashing is essentially, I mean, you hear ecotourism, you hear green, we're going green and we're sustainable travel, but what matters is what's behind the scenes. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. You really need to dig deeper. And as we consider ourselves custodians of your time and your money, and it's our job to vet that stuff for you. So, whoever you travel to Africa, make sure that they're vetting who they are working with in Africa. The partners that you work with are very important. Are they financially stable? Are they really doing what they say they're doing? Or is it all part of their marketing? Unfortunately, that happens in any industry. So
that's a good way to see it. Is it part of marketing or is it real life?
Yeah. I mean, is it philanthropic marketing or is it real? And we deal with real people.
We have Amanda going to Tanzania next summer. So excited for you. Liz is our agent. Liz is amazing. Everybody on our team is amazing. We went with Susan to Tanzania last year. I had the most amazing time. This is Lisa. I hope I'm saying your name right. We fell in love with Africa the first day at Oliver's camp, and that's why we're going back next year. That's a special place.
That's so cool. Oliver's camp is really a very special place, and I'm so glad that you went there. Tanzania is definitely, a lot of people think that because there's more tourism that goes to Kenya or Tanzania than any other sort of emerging country, that they're more commercial. That's not the truth. I mean, Kenya barely, I think, hit 1.8 million visitors. I mean, when you think about Disney I don't know what Disney is, it's startling. It's like 60 million people a year. Africa is nowhere near a commercial, commoditized destination. There are people that support that sort of tourism, cheap and nasty, and they're not really doing anything for conservation. But what we try to do is find the people that are doing things right. It's especially important to me. I mean, being a fourth generation Kenyan, I find that I've seen habitat being lost. I've seen things change quite a bit. And what we want to do is ensure that those true wilderness experiences exist. And I can tell you, Kenya tourism is better now than it was 10 years ago, because people are doing the responsible thing, and we have sought them out. And a lot of them went to high school with me. So I'm very proud of that. So yeah, we're very deeply connected to Africa, and we love the fact that you've had a good experience with us, and we hope that you will continue supporting Africa.
I can't believe that it is, what time is it?
8:24.
It's almost 8:30. We still have a lot of people with us. You guys are amazing. Going back to why we're in this business, connections. The fact that you're connecting with us right now is a huge compliment. Thank you so much for being with us. And we will be sending out another survey. Thank you for everybody who provided feedback on the last one. We really want to make every one of these better.
By the way, on the last couple of ones that we did, we actually had someone give us, there was a lot of compliments that we got on the first two. And then there was someone that gave us constructive criticism.
Yeah.
And we've taken it to heart. I mean, that's the way we work. So please, I mean, if there's something that we could do better, we're not afraid of constructive criticism.
We're new to webinars, but we're trying
we're
so
new
hard.
to this, and we're trying to do it right. And we're trying to make it, bearable and fun and educational. And if we're hitting the mark, let us know. If we're not, let us know. I mean, we will.
Cindy's turning next week.
Cool.
See you, Cindy.
Thanks again to all of you for joining us. If there are any other questions, feel free to email us.
Thank you, Michael.
And
Michael from And Beyond. Yay!
Michael Grigorich. Okay. We had Michael Grigorich from And Beyond, who, thank you, Michael, for arranging Phinda for us. See,
Yes,
I told you it was
thank
going to be
you.
worthwhile because it's one of my favorite places on the world. So, and James
Love
Curry
it.
said the same thing. So, Michael, thanks for joining us. Again, thanks to all of you that have taken the time to spend happy hour with us. We're going to try and finish off this beautiful
Back to our wine.
bottle
Talking
of
so much. Haven't had time to drink wine.
South African wine. I've been drinking, you know, and I've been talking too. But this is a Dimasfontein Pinotage, and actually one of the best value Pinotage from South Africa because it's got little sort of flavors of and aromas of coffee.
Yeah, which isn't normal for a Pinotage, right?
No, it isn't at all.
This is a good one. So you guys should come over.
Yeah. Okay, I think we should sign off.
Yeah,
now.
we're done.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.